Have you ever just dropped into the supermarket to pick up a few bits and ended up spending your entire week's grocery budget on a filler shop? Yeah, same here. Turns out a lot of what we buy at the supermarket is overpriced, unnecessary, or just a marketing trick. So I'm going to be breaking down 20 things to avoid buying at the supermarket. Avoiding these could halve your grocery bill. Stick with me right to the end because I'll be sharing 3 things that I actually think are totally worth buying. First thing to avoid buying at the supermarket is magazines. The kids' magazine section particularly is one of the reasons why I try to avoid taking the children with me to the supermarket. They're just about the age now where they're growing out of it, but it used to be the case where we would go and they would always want one of these $5 or $6.99 magazines that came with a whole bunch of plastic tat that would interest them for maybe like 5 minutes and then was just something that I had to find a home for in the house. It's always really low quality, just really rubbish, and the magazines rarely hold their attention for very long. We actually already subscribe to a weekly kids magazine called The Week Junior, which is all about current affairs and news. It's absolutely fantastic for kids. I really rate it. But so many of these other kids magazines just are very flimsy in terms of content. They don't hold their attention for very long, and as I say, the plastic toys that come with them are just useless. The next thing to avoid buying is seasonal decor, gifts, and general tat. I really feel like this year the Valentine's stuff really ramped up a notch. Like, there was so much in my local supermarkets. With Valentine's Day, it used to be that you would buy a card and maybe like some flowers, a box of chocolates, possibly some jewelry if you were splashing out. Now it's on a par with Christmas. You've got banners and plates and special Valentine's cookware and PJs and whole outfits. There's like a whole aesthetic that goes with Valentine's Day now. Look, I love my husband, but I am not serving him dessert in a heart-shaped bowl. He can have the normal plates that we already have in the cupboard. And if refusing to buy a heart-shaped bowl means that I'm not romantic, then hey, so be it. I just really hate how much spending money on someone has become a requirement to show them that you care. What happened to just kind gestures and spending some time together? I think it's exactly the same with New Year, Easter, St. Patrick's Day, summer, Halloween, Christmas. Everything has got bigger. But do we really have to have an entire set of household decorations and cookware and plates for every single holiday and season of the year? We're potentially talking about spending hundreds every year on getting this stuff. So much of it is disposable and you won't be able to use it the next year. It's getting so extreme, people even rotate their entire household decor based on the season, swapping out cushions and swapping out throw pillows so that the colour matches the aesthetic of the season. If you are on a budget, if you are trying to save money this year, then just reject this concept that you have to buy all of this stuff in order to appreciate the special days throughout the year and the seasons of the year. You don't need the stuff. Next on my list is pre-cut and pre-prepared meat. Any product where the supermarket has done something in order to aid the preparation process for you is going to cost you a bit more money. So for example, diced up chicken breast, diced up beef, diced up lamb, all that kind of stuff. Wherever possible, buy whole cuts of meat. It's going to be way cheaper to buy a whole chicken than it is to buy separately a packet of chicken breasts, a packet of chicken thighs, a packet of chicken legs, and some chicken wings. Plus, when you have a whole chicken, there's so much more you can do with it. You can boil up the carcass in order to make soup and stocks. And with things like burgers and meatballs, you'll save money if you buy mince in bulk and just make them yourself. It's actually really easy. All you need to do is add eggs and breadcrumbs and then whatever kind of seasoning that you want to put in there. And the next one is quite similar. Any kind of pre-cut fruit, pre-prepared veg, and cheese as well. The markup on pre-cut fruit and veg is as much as 10 to 40% more than if you just buy whole foods. Now, confession time on this one. I do buy pre-cut mango for my kids because they absolutely love it. They like it as a snack and they also really love it as a dessert with a little bit of yogurt after dinner. Now, although I can cut up a whole mango, I actually find it's so hit and miss buying whole mangoes from the supermarket. So often they are just not particularly great quality. The diced up stuff that you can get in a package is so much nicer than when I've bought a whole mango and chopped it up myself at home, and plus I seem to just get way more, so I much prefer doing it that way. However, with anything else like cauliflower, broccoli, carrots, I will always buy the whole thing and then just prepare it at home. Just one exception I would just like to add is that it's really worth checking out the freezer section for things like herbs and garlic and ginger. You can get bagged frozen garlic, which generally speaking can be a lot cheaper, and also it's going to last a lot longer than if you buy fresh. Of course, if you do prefer to buy fresh because you find that that is cheaper where you are, then what you can do is you can mince the garlic at home and then freeze it into portions, stick it in your freezer, and then just get it out as and when you need it. Hopefully that will just prevent you from throwing away more food, which ultimately is wasting your money. Next, salad kits. Salad kits are put together for your convenience, but you will spend much less if you buy the salad leaves, dressing and croutons separately, or try and make them yourself ideally. Salad dressing is actually quite easy to put together, and I would be willing to bet that you've probably got quite a lot of the things that you need to make a nice vinaigrette or salad dressing in your cupboards already. Produce out of season. When food is in season, it means that it's in greater abundance. There's going to have been less cost to the farmers to produce and grow it, and also it may have had to travel a lesser distance in order to get to supermarket shelves. When it's out of season, it may be much harder to produce and take longer to transport to the supermarket, and that cost gets passed on to you, the consumer. Try to keep an eye out for fruit, veggies and meat that are in season. Oftentimes supermarkets will actually flag up the produce that is in season, so keep an eye out for their displays. But sometimes you have to have a general awareness of what is in season and when. There's a website I found that's got a really fabulous guide to what's in season and when in the UK. I'll link it in the description below. Organic produce. I realise that this might be a bit of an unpopular opinion for some people, but I don't feel particularly strongly about organic foods. I get that there are some environmental benefits to this kind of produce, but generally speaking, because they are often so much more expensive than just the other products that are on the shelf, I tend to give them a swerve. And I've also read that some of the health benefits are a bit overblown as well, so I'm sticking to purse-friendly options, sorry. Next up, single-serve snack packs. Our kids now have a packed lunch almost every day, and the struggle to keep them interesting is real. And that's particularly at 7 in the morning when I am half asleep. Now, I get that these little snack packs where the stuff has been pre-measured and put into a handy little container are really, really convenient, but you pay for the convenience. Rather than buying any pre-cut veggies for dipping or crackers that have been portioned out into a dipping snack pot, instead we use these small plastic storage pots we have, which are great for fitting into the kids' lunch boxes, and then we'll chop up things like carrot sticks and add little bits of hummus and cream cheese for the kids to dip whatever we give them in there. It does take a few extra minutes to prepare in the mornings, but given the markup on these products, I feel like it is time well spent. Bottled water and ice. We have a cupboard shelf that is absolutely full of plastic and metal water bottles that we can take out with us, and we also have a fridge freezer that dispenses chilled water and ice. This is something that I've just never felt the need to spend any money on. And to be honest, with drinks generally, I'm actually quite boring. I'll have water, milk, maybe a little bit of squash, and that's it. The kids do have juice, and for a treat I might have a smoothie, but generally speaking, I'll make those myself. And that leads us nicely on to the next thing not to buy at the supermarket, which is bottled smoothies. I am currently obsessed with making our own smoothies at home. It's so easy to do. I've been experimenting with different combinations. I just buy frozen fruit, which often is on offer, so I'll bulk buy it because obviously it's going in the freezer, so it's absolutely fine. We're going to use it up before there's any chance of it going off. And I'll just mix that frozen fruit up with a little bit of ice, a little bit of juice, maybe sometimes some sorbet if I feel like having a bit of a treat. And if I've got some fresh fruit that's gone a little bit squishy, I'll also chuck that in there as well. It costs a fraction of what you will pay for bottled smoothies. And I'm just going to add to this these bottled gut health drinks that I've seen popping up more and more in the supermarket chilled section as well. Now, I'm not into this kind of thing anyway, but my understanding is that if you want like a kind of healthy protein or gut health drink, that you can actually buy powdered versions which work out way cheaper and then mix it up yourself rather than buying the ready to drink versions. So if you're into this stuff, maybe just consider that switch. Moving on to one of my favorite topics, pancakes. I do not like to buy pre-made pancake mix at the supermarket. Pancakes are one of our absolute favorite meals. I love having breakfast for dinner. And I always make them from scratch because I always have those key staple ingredients in. And on the whole, it just works out so much cheaper to do it this way. Next, breadcrumbs. I will admit that panko breadcrumbs have a far superior crunch to them, but I like to make homemade because I've always got bread in and it just works out so much cheaper. All you need to do is get a piece of bread, stick it in the oven at a low heat for just a few minutes so that it dries out a little bit, and then whiz it up in a blender or a food processor. Cheaper and easier than rushing out to buy them last minute. Pasta sauces. The only jarred pasta sauce I've found that I like is this all-rounder one that M&S does. It is absolutely delicious. However, it's not very cheap at all. So if I have that sauce in, occasionally I will use it, but I often like to make it myself from scratch, just using passata or chopped tomatoes. Now, I like to use the slightly more expensive chopped tomatoes in passata, which is made by the brand Mutti. I just think it's so nice. It tastes way better than the supermarket owned chopped tomatoes in my opinion. However, it still works out cheaper than buying a jarred pasta sauce. Then I can just add seasoning and herbs to whatever taste that the kids are gonna prefer. And continuing my war on pre-made foods, we've also got pre-made Yorkshire pudding on the list. I think you can buy a pack of like 10 Yorkshires in the freezer section for like £2. However, I can make them at home for way less than that. I reckon making 4 probably cost me about 30p in ingredients, and the rise on them is so much better than the freezer ones that you can buy in the supermarket, in my humble opinion. Pre-made sandwiches. This one is a really easy swerve for me because I actually really hate mayonnaise, and I find it so difficult to find a sandwich that's sold in a supermarket or in a deli that does not have mayonnaise in it, or something like horseradish. Like, there's always some kind of sauce. I'm a very simple girl. I like my sandwiches to be super plain. So with our sandwiches, I'll often make it using, say, leftover meat from a roast dinner or from any kind of leftovers we have from dinner the night before. If your kids really love ham sandwiches, it will often work out cheaper to just buy a whole gammon joint, cook that and slice it up at home yourself rather than buying the pre-sliced ham. Next, fresh stock. I totally get that fresh stock is way more appealing than the stuff that you buy in cubes from the spice and herb section of the supermarket. But like with so many things on this list, when you buy pre-made fresh stock, there is a markup because the supermarket has done a ton of the work for you, or the producer that sold the item to the supermarket has done a bunch of the work for you. I do all of my stock from just stock cubes, and honestly, I never notice the difference. Next, branded spices. The price of herbs and spices by weight is just insane. And if you look closer, you'll see there is a huge difference between the branded spices that you can buy in the specific herbs and spices aisle of the supermarket and the supermarket own brand, but then there's also a big difference between those and the herbs and spices you can buy in the World Foods aisle. It is crazy. Just a few feet away and it can be as much as half the price. Another really great place to get cheap herbs and spices is your local independent Asian food store. Stuff that is not on your list. The supermarket is filled with impulse purchase traps that you have to try and avoid. For larger supermarkets, it's even harder to resist the temptation because there's often a clothing and decor section as well. Plus, there are beauty products and foods that are on offer, and then there is the whole area around the checkouts, which is just filled with impulse purchase items. Just really try to hold firm and stick with what's on your list only. I would just add that I found that whenever I shop hungry, I am way more susceptible to offers on foods and buying stuff that wasn't on the list. Put your foot down, go in with the list and stick with the list. Non-perishable products at full price. I never buy our non-perishable stuff such as deodorant, laundry detergent, dishwasher capsules, the stuff the kids use at bath time, at full price. The trick is always to stock up when you see it on offer. These things are not necessarily going to be on offer every single week. As soon as you see that offer, you need to stock up with a few weeks worth. And always be prepared to switch brands in order to take advantage of an offer. And while we're on the subject of non-perishables, it's worth noting that the cleaning aisle has grown and grown and grown over the last few years. There are so many different cleaning products now. It's just insane. But just try to remember there's a very, very short list of things that you actually need in order to keep your home clean. You probably need some kind of furniture polish, a glass cleaner, a multi-purpose cleaner, bleach. That's pretty much it. Vinegar as well can do so many household cleaning tasks around the home. Now that we've talked about stuff that I avoid buying from the supermarket, let's talk about a few things that I think are definitely worth buying when you take a trip to the grocery store. First one is own brand nappies or diapers and wipes. Pampers nappies in bulk from Amazon cost about 15p per nappy, whereas Tesco's own brand Fred and Flo nappies cost just 4p per nappy. And Aldi's own brand are even cheaper at just 3 pence per nappy. I accept that unlike with Pampers, you don't get the indicator strip that shows you when the nappy is full. However, realistically, all you really need to do is give it a bit of a prod and a whiff to tell if it is full. Now, my kids haven't been in nappies for a long time now, but in my experience, the supermarket nappies are just as effective at getting the job done as the branded ones. At less than a third of the price, it's a switch worth making. Next, ready meals. Now, I'm definitely not advocating buying ready meals on a regular basis throughout the week. That is definitely going to cost you a lot more. However, what I'm talking about is switching out a takeaway for a nice ready meal from a supermarket. Sometimes I'm just not in the mood to cook on a Friday or a Saturday. I'm tired, it's been a long week, I kind of want to treat myself to like an Indian or a pizza or something like that. But I don't want to pay the exorbitant cost of having food delivered to the house. So to give myself a little break, I will get a nice ready meal from M&S or from Waitrose as a little treat. It means I get a nice meal, minimal effort to myself, and it's less than a quarter of the price of having a takeaway delivered to the house. The final thing is ready-made rolled pastry. Now, I know I've had a lot of negative things to say about pre-made, pre-cut foods in this video. However, for me, there are definitely some shortcuts that are worth taking, and pastry is one of them. I've tried making my own puff pastry and it's actually quite hard. So I will happily save myself the time and effort of having to make it all from scratch and buy the pre-made stuff when I'm making a pie or a dessert or something similar that requires pastry. Okay guys, that's the end of my list. What are the things that you guys avoid buying at the supermarket in order to save money? I would love to hear. Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.